Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Joseph Clough, and this is episode 802. Now, in this episode, we're talking about the cost of limiting beliefs, or the beliefs that we have about ourselves, about the world. Now, to give you some examples of what kind of beliefs that I'm talking about is the limiting beliefs about ourselves, which could be the I'm not good enough, the I'm not worthy, the I'm not deserving, the I'm not capable, the belief of the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, fear of success, fear of what people think of us. They're all kind of beliefs, really. Or even like that I'm not lovable. I'm not love. These limiting beliefs about ourselves can come at a big cost, even if we then go to the external. So what example is external? Well, if you have a belief about money being the root of all evil, does that cost you? Does it support you? Because some people believe that. Or some people have limiting beliefs about money, like it doesn't grow on trees. But it kind of comes from trees though, right? Unless you're in England, they have all that plastic paper these days. Or for notes, I should say. It could be beliefs about work, relationships, that all men or all women do X, Y, Z, but they're going to eventually hurt and betray us. We could have health beliefs about what is physically possible about ourselves. Like, I'm too old to get fit. It's a belief system. It's a mindset, right? Now, I want you to be really conscious about this episode. Even if you have a pen and paper, may as well just bring it out right now. I want us to take a real look at thinking about what the beliefs do. Do they serve us? Do they allow us to live the life that we want? Because if you have a limit, let's take, for example, one of the biggest beliefs that we work through for my company which is the belief of the I'm not good enough, the I'm not worthy, the I'm not deserving. That kind of energy, ultimately. If you think of that belief, if you live that belief, and you may well do, because many people who listen to the podcast, the YouTube's channel, all those things, have the imposter syndrome and may believe like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not deserving, I'm not capable. Put it in the context of, say, your career. Does that limiting belief cost you in some way? Does it cost you in a sense that you might become a people pleaser? That maybe you don't go for that promotion because you think that you cannot handle it. Maybe you fear getting the sack because you're going to get found out. That's what the imposter syndrome is, right? Like thinking, oh my goodness, what if I mess up? What if this happens? Think about what it cost you. Not just even financially, by the way. It doesn't have to be like in the promotions. You could do. I mean, it could cost you 10 grand a year, 20 grand a year, 100 grand a year, depending on the severity and also the context of the job that you're in. But what about on the emotional cost when it comes to that belief system? So if I believe I'm not good enough, how much stress do I feel in the physical body? Does it weigh on my shoulders? Do I experience anxiety? Do I experience dread? Do I experience blushing like I used to? I used to be always self-conscious for like the first 18 years of my life. And since doing hypnosis for the last 22 years, I've let go of all that stuff. But if I carried on that pathway, doing the job I disliked, but also just waking up every single day, living for the weekend, how much stress does that have an effect on the physical well-being? Like even doctors say that stress breaks a chain of good health. If I have that prolonged stress, that burden that I live with by not feeling I'm good enough for, say, a week, a month, a year, a decade, for the rest of my life, what is the comparison to the opposite of I am enough when it comes to the physical well-being of who you are, to know that you're worthy, deserving of? How does it affect your physical well-being, your emotional well-being? Because they are totally interconnected. Your thoughts, your unconscious mind is always eavesdropping on the thoughts. So if you're having the inner critic and you're beating yourself up all the time, then of course your body feels it. Does it go into our sleep? Does it cause us the cost of maybe sedating ourselves from society, or sedating ourselves with social media, sedating ourselves with alcohol, drugs, smoking, certain foods, and all those kind of things? And you might be going, oh my goodness, there's a lot to take on if I do weigh this all up. Well, at the end of the day, the reason why I'm saying this, because it's leverage. You need to understand the cost of staying the same. So I'm not trying to be mean here. I'm not trying to make you look in the mirror and go, oh my goodness, my life is rubbish. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to go, look, this is the present. This is the future if we stay the same. But what if? What if we can let go of that? What if we utilize that as leverage to the unconscious mind? You see, when I work with my people in my program, we let go of the whole issue within 8 weeks, like the imposter syndrome, the belief of not being good enough, as I mentioned. And one of the ideas that I always get people to go through is coming up with 100 reasons to change. Whether that be the 100 costs of change. So the cost, if I don't change, this is going to happen. Oh, another cost, before we go down this, the two levels. This is a hidden cost that we don't really think about, and it's not going to be for everyone. But let's just say you have children. What is the cost to them? And this might wake us up a little bit more. This might make us go, oh my goodness, this is not cool. Because if we tell the story to ourselves long enough that we're not worthy, we're not deserving, we're not good enough, we're not capable, and we act upon that by our physiology, our tonality, like out of communication, and I've said this recently, like 93% is all unconscious. So you can be saying all the right words, but your physiology, the tonality, which is making up of the 93%, is being sent out like a signal. And if we think of that cost, like I said, this is a wake-up call. This is a good thing. There's what we really want as leverage. Do we want to pass down the same stories that we've been telling ourselves to our children? Will they carry on that legacy of I'm not good enough to their children? To their children, to their children. Maybe you're only carrying on that story because maybe you were told that from your parents. I mean, think about, and there's, like I said, it's not applicable for everyone, but I'm curious to know, have any of us who have the belief of not being good enough, worthy, deserving, or capable, the fear of failure, the fear of success, having to be perfect, all of those things, I'd be curious to know. And by the way, this is being broadcasted live on youtube.com/Joseph Clough, so you can leave it in the chat if you wanted to. But for those listening to the podcast in the future, you may just want to kind of weigh this up in your mind. But were any of the things that led to the belief of maybe not feeling good enough or worthy, did they reside or begin from people within our family? Like when we were growing up, in other words, which were imprinted upon, or that we modeled because we witnessed our parents, whether we witnessing them go through a divorce, or whether they had high demands for us for being successful, like high expectations. Did any of that come from our parents? It may not do, but I'm curious to find out, right? Because you've got to be curious about this, because then it makes you wonder, well, where did they get their, what they passed down to us? Who passed it down to them? Was it because of their parents? Was it beyond their parents and grandparents, great grandparents? How many stories are we carrying on and passing down? What is the cost in our lineage and our legacy if we pass this down? Now, of course, it may not have been passed down to you. You may have gone through a significant emotional event, right? So maybe it was a breakup, maybe it was being told that you weren't good enough by your boss, or some kind of stress event which came to the conclusion that, oh, that must mean I'm not good enough. So that is possible as well. But I'm curious to know if the origin of those beliefs were actually passed down to us from our family. And that should be the wake-up call for ourselves to go, look, actually, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to be the example of what can be done for my children. I'm going to have that 100% congruency in my words, my physiology, my tonality, to be able to allow them to see a model of transformation of what is possible. But as I was saying, like in my program, I want people to come up with 100 reasons to change. And sometimes those reasons are costs of changing, right? Or for cost if we don't change. One of my favorite Christmas movies is the Christmas Carol, the Scrooge and that kind of one, where it's like they got the past, the present, and the future. Like those awakenings caused him to go, oh my goodness, I've got to change my ways. So be aware of the cost, not just financially. Like when we think of like cost, we go, oh, financially it's going to cost a lot if I stay the same. Like paying therapists or spending money on alcohol or whatever it may be, the waste of time, therefore we're not being productive in our company or in our business if we're business owners, all of those things. Become conscious of the cost, not just financial, but also the emotional well-being, the physical well-being, for some maybe the spiritual well-being, or the consequential well-being to those that we are surrounded by. If we kind of go, well, this is the cost, wouldn't it be better to save that cost and go all in now on your transformation? Like what you do now will then become your past eventually. So you're setting up a new pathway, you're setting up a new direction and route that's going to serve you best. Now, one thing I want to be very, very clear, the belief of not being good enough, for example, and we could say not worthy, deserving, or capable, is a protective mechanism at an unconscious level. Is trying to keep you safe. So the intention is pure. It's just that the unconscious mind has got stuck along the way. I don't know when for you personally, but maybe it was when you were younger, when all that stuff happened, and then your unconscious mind, not conscious, came to the conclusion, well, that must mean I'm not enough. It could have been later on in life. It could have been last week that led us to that belief. But our unconscious mind created the belief, because no one can get in our mind and create it ourselves. We must assume it to be true based on the evidence that we have. And by evidence, I mean the events that we go through. But if our unconscious mind is doing it for protection, if we have enough leverage of all the costs of staying the same, isn't that going to be a wake-up call not just for you, but also for your unconscious mind? To go, oh my goodness, I'm not keeping you safe by running this behavior. It doesn't mean the whole problem's going to disappear overnight. It could do, hopefully so. Sometimes you need to do the deep work in re-educating the unconscious mind of being safe and protected, like through crazy cool processes, whether it be my program or wherever you work with someone else, a counselor, or if you're a coach or whatever it may be. But if we can get the unconscious mind to go, oh my goodness, this is not serving me, and we meet the issue where it lives, the unconscious mind, and then provide it an alternative strategy which meets the needs and the intention of safety, but without the actual belief itself. You see, your unconscious mind, which runs the beliefs, and I gave you the example of I'm not good enough, but change it to something else, like the belief that money is a bad thing. If we can convince the unconscious mind that that belief is not serving you, that it's not, so if you go, oh, money sucks or it's a horrible thing, if we can convince the unconscious mind actually it's a tool that solves problems, that gives you security, which allows you to provide for your family or your community or for your legacy, it can actually change the world being abundant, then your unconscious mind is going to go, well, that's a better pathway. One of the prime directives, like in other words, the prime reasons or roles that the unconscious mind does is protection. If you cut yourself, and I did today actually, I didn't have to do too much about it. I don't know what happened, it's kind of magical really. It sent all the different cells to be able to do, I don't know if they're even cells to be honest, but you know what I mean, biologically it did the work. I might need to keep it clean or keep it originally clean, but it's going to do that. It's going to protect. The fight and flight response, protection. The habits that we have, protection. the ability to repress negative emotions or events, I should say, to try to protect us. You see, it gives us this to keep us safe. That's what it's really trying to do. So if your unconscious mind, if we can agree upon this, hopefully we can, despite the behavior, despite that belief or the core issue being detrimental to your health, to your success, to your emotional well-being, to your finances, to your career growth or spiritual growth, your personal development growth, we can agree that the behavior of that belief is not that good. But the intention as to why we have it is positive. Maybe the fear of not being good enough or deserving is to keep you playing small so you don't get hurt. Maybe it's trying to sabotage relationships so they don't eventually hurt you. Maybe that perfectionism is like to do your very best and to perform better, but you know we can never truly get to perfectionism, right? Because it's pretty much impossible. It's either everything is perfect or nothing is perfect. You get to choose your truth there, but either way, you're perfect without being perfect, or you're imperfectly perfect. You get to choose that one. But if your unconscious mind is trying to protect you by running these beliefs, if we can provide it with an alternative which satisfies that intention, as I said, biologically, it has to do it. So I would suggest taking the time, and this can be a 5-minute, but I'd want it to be a good hour at least, coming up with the consequences of holding that belief. In other words, what is the cost of that belief system? And go deep into it. Is it costing us a beautiful, loving relationship? Is it costing us, like at the end of my life, I didn't go for my dream, which was to set up my own company or to get to the top of a company? Is it going to cost me my health? Like if I get so much evidence and data that goes, oh my goodness, I've got to change, then you're telling your unconscious mind, I've got to change. It has to listen. Right? Because the unconscious mind, as I said near the beginning, is always eavesdropping. The real problem is trying to bury it, trying to escape it, trying to sedate it, because that keeps us in our comfort zone, which is very, very uncomfortable in the long term. You see, people, when they think about making changes, go, oh my goodness, it's going to be so hard, it's going to be expensive to let go of this. I've got to hire someone, whether it be like myself or another coach. I've got to put money into this. I've got to pay them for their education, what they've spent to educate themselves. I've got to compensate them for that, which is true. You have to compensate me if you go in my program. And like, the free work is all for free, right? Use it as much as you want. I don't mind taking the cost for all the free work I do over the 800 episodes. But sometimes you need to compensate, or on top of that, invest in yourself. And people get scary about that. But the curious thing is, and this may rub some people the wrong way, but some people are more likely to buy the new phone, which may cost $1,000 or so, or go out to dinner every single week, order that pizza, or order that alcohol. But if you added that up for a year, that's probably a lot. Or even just time wasted, right? Just think how much more productive you could be if you go, I'm going to bite the bullet and just do it right now, because I know, although it's hard to go all in, because it is scary, because we are ultimately by going, oh my goodness, I'm worth it, to get to the place that I'm worth it, because it's an interesting paradigm, right? Or to go, well, the nature of investing myself or working with someone, by the way, this doesn't have to be me. I'm not saying this. I can only work with so many people anyway, because it's fully customized and tailored. But just in general, even if it's like put it into a different context, different person, different situation, the level of investment into yourself, hey, let's go beyond money. Let's just say you do it by yourself. I don't really mind. The investment of time, if you go all in for a year, and it may be a struggle because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know how to overcome it yet, but let's just say you dedicated your year or every spare amount of time that you have on your development, letting go of the belief of the I'm not good enough. Is it worth that cost? I'm going to call it a cost here. Because is it worth the cost of a year? Or is it worth the cost of a lifetime of staying the same? Weigh it up in your mind. If I just put the effort in for a year and let it go, and therefore saved all the costs for the rest of my life, to me, that's a no-brainer. Even on the financial stuff, like if I want to grow my business, I'm going to hire someone who's better than me to show me how to do that. That's what it is to do business. And I like to think of self-development in the exact same way. I need to have skin in the game. I need to invest in myself. Personal opinion, like you don't have to agree with that one, but that's just who I am. I see the value of that investment, and I'm going to reiterate, to be very, very clear, I'm not saying to invest in my services. We only work with certain people who are ready, or certain issues I say, and certain people, because I've got to like them. We've got to really want to work with you, but that's very limited. So other people, whatever it is, just to reiterate, I'm not trying to sell you upon a thing. I'm trying to sell you the outcome without necessarily my services. But you got to weigh up the cost. The long-term cost of staying the same is going to be so much more painful than going, I am ready to make this change. So as you think of your limiting belief, I would love you to take the time and figure out what's the cost of keeping that belief. What is the cost of running it, the maintenance of the running of it, the consequence of running that limiting belief? And if you can get so many consequences of what will happen, or what is or what will happen by staying the same, that should motivate you like you never had. Because most people live in their comfort zone. I call it no man's land. You're like somewhere in the middle. You're not quite in pain. You're not quite where you want to be. So you kind of just stay just out the heat to be okay. But really it's very miserable. It's not that comfortable in the comfort zone. It's just familiar, right? It's familiar to feel this anxiety and therefore try to push it down. It's familiar to feel dread, so I begin to think, well, I'm just broken and I can't change. But it's not true. Ultimately, you can let go of any limiting belief that is stopping you step into your dreams and step into the goals that you truly desire. But it comes with one real vital part, and that is you. Like, I can't get, in the same way that someone can't get in your mind and go, you're not good enough, you have to assume it to be true based on the events that you went through. And it's easy to understand because we were probably very young, we didn't know any different. But in the exact same way, you have to assume responsibility to go, do you know what? I've weighed up everything. This is not a good business plan. Staying the same is not productive. It's not going to yield the profit that I want in emotional well-being, in physical well-being, in the cost of passing it down to my children and maybe their children and so on, as we pass down the baton of the I'm not good enough, the I'm not worthy or deserving. And like I said, you can change it to money. When we have the limiting beliefs around money, you can change it to career or relationship. Whatever you're experiencing, and it's going to be more of a set of beliefs, because the beliefs dictate your capabilities, which therefore generates behaviors, which causes you to show up in your environment in a certain way. In other words, your environment means the relationship, the career, the business, as a mum, as a dad, as a sibling, as a son or a daughter, all those roles that we play. That's our environment. So don't try to change the environment. Don't try to change even the behavior. Don't try and change the capabilities. You really want to go all in the higher level, the identity of who you are. Because once you change that, suddenly your capacity is open, it is huge, and it's expanded. And therefore, the things that you do are expanded. In other words, your behavior, the way that you act and react. You're now operating from a psychology and physiology of excellence where you're taking massive and inspired action because you are worth it and you know that you're deserving, or money's a good thing, or relationships are great, whatever the opposite of that belief was. And therefore you go into any environment in charge of your mind. Excuse me. I'm getting way too excited. You go into any environment knowing that you're in charge of your mind and therefore your results. And to me, that's what is so important in my life, to assume responsibility. And I'll always keep saying it. The quote from Viktor Frankl, who was in the concentration camps, who said, when you're unable to change the situation, you are challenged to change yourself. So become of the consequences of the situation and challenge yourself to go all in on yourself. Because the problem of feeling not good enough at times, the problem of not feeling deserving, or the problem of the limiting beliefs around money and relationships, whatever it is for you, it doesn't benefit anything in the long term. It is a painful. But when you go from the effect side of life, rather being a product of life, instead you assume responsibility and you go, do you know what? This is for me. You're no longer going to be a people pleaser. You're no longer going to be like on the plane putting all the oxygen masks on everyone while you're depleted in oxygen, because that leads, in that metaphor, not a good one, but in life, a burnout. And therefore you feel broken, and therefore your unconscious mind makes limiting decisions even deeper than before. So if you have this wake up and epiphany right now, you can go, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And then the nature of doing it becomes evidence to your unconscious mind. But I'm going to have to make this happen because there's a safer way of being in this world. So I hope you got some value from this. It is so important to come up with those consequences on the negative, right? Like the cost, but also on the positive, the investment of once you do change, what is that going to give you? What's going to be the profit margin? What's going to be the growth there? Would allow you to live the most beautiful life, where you use those learnings that you've gone through, that transformation, to be an example to everyone in your life. And therefore, even if there's negative people out there, you go, do you know what? I'm more. I'm ready for more. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to live a life of emotional freedom. And of course, there's not something you have to do. In fact, I suggest most people do not do this. But if you are totally ready and committed to make that change, and you want to personally apply to work with me and my team to be able to meet the issue where it lives, which is the unconscious mind, because that's where the beliefs are held, you can go to josephclough.info/talk. And when you go there, you'll be able to book a call with us, with one of the team, and therefore you fill out a quick questionnaire or application form. And then when you get on that one-to-one Zoom, we'll get clear on exactly what you want to let go, get clear on exactly what you want to achieve, and get clear on what's unconsciously stopping you. And then we'll come up with a plan customized for your needs. Yes, there is an investment, because you get the investment back of a lifetime to be free of the imposter syndrome for the rest of your life. To be free of the dread and the anxiety, so you wake up like literally every day excited, even in the storm, even in the challenge, because you're worth it, in my opinion. I believe in you. So once again, that is josephclough.info/talk. And with that, we're going to end this episode, and I look forward to speaking to you on a future one. Many thanks and goodbye.